the Book of Enoch is definitely up there, and the contents of the Book of Enoch are very important to researchers and people that are looking for answers, because the narrative seems to raise a lot of very different possibilities to what we've been indoctrinated with and what we've been taught with regard to the church and the creation of humankind, etc. This whole Genesis 6 and the whole Book of Enoch and Enoch raises a lot of questions about the sons of heaven. Who were they? What were they? What did they do here? How did they influence us? Are they, as Lee says, interdimensional beings that are able to pop across into a different dimension, which many of the UFOs seem to be able to do? They move very quickly. That shouldn't be possible. And then they just disappear. And then they just appear again and that kind of thing. That is what interdimensional travel would have been. What was Christ's ascension? Was that a dimensional shift? It's a distinct possibility. We know that there's multiple dimensions, possibilities, and he actually even told us that in my Father's kingdom there are many mansions, many different worlds, many different dimensions, all kinds of things.
This is the Strange and Mysterious World podcast, in conjunction with Elucis TV. These are your hosts, Lee Stridham and William Collinson.
Welcome to Strange and Mysterious World, Season 5, Episode 16. Tonight's guest is our famous and one and only Father Damon Urbani from the Liberal Catholic Church. Father's always got some really, really interesting stuff to say and to talk about. And tonight we're going to be chatting about the Book of Enoch. It's a very, very controversial book, and there's some like really heavy stuff and weird shit in there. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. So what do you say, Will?
So did you read it?
The Book of Enoch, yeah.
Yeah, also I just finished it as well this morning.
It's a really
but let's see Father Damon, what he has to say.
Yeah, let's bring him in, man. Hello, Father.
Here we go, Father.
Hello. Good evening.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Just cold. All of a sudden, winter has come upon us, and it's actually quite cold up here in Joburg.
Okay, well, I'm joining you
I'm
tomorrow.
actually also in Joburg.
Yeah.
I'm in Joburg as well, and Lee's coming there tomorrow. Coming here.
Okay, so it's wet, and it's cold, and it's dark. So.
Yeah, it's pretty dark. And I'm not even talking about outside. I'm just Father, what is that thing behind you? I've always seen that thing, and I don't know, what is that thing? There's some nice pictures there. There's some beautiful pictures over there.
There's a sword. There's one of my swords. I have a sword collection. So that's a Gurkha kukri, a sword, and a bayonet.
Okay.
Jeez. Okay, you are the most interesting father.
Yeah, I have Scottish. I have some very nice swords. I have some Scottish swords as well. I can't show them to you. I've got a beautiful sword collection. Yeah.
Because the other father we interviewed, Mark, he had a jiu-jitsu hoodie. I say the church is quite different. Hey, nowadays.
The church militant.
You got jiu-jitsu fighters, and you got swordman fathers, and it's quite interesting.
It's been interesting since the days of Enoch. Let's have a look.
Oh yes, yes, absolutely.
And why was it left out of the main canon? Come on, man. It's like
the Book of Enoch. Yeah. The Book of Enoch is one of 15 books that are called apocryphal, and were originally and in many places still part of the accepted canonical Bible. The King James Version always used to print they always printed 14 books of the Apocrypha, because they always left Enoch out. And I'll tell you the story about that. The Eastern Orthodox churches accept the Apocryphas, and our church also accepts the Apocrypha. These days, the Apocrypha is not printed in most Bibles, including the King James Version. And this one that I've got, this copy of the Apocrypha, is printed by the Cambridge Press. And the reason why they state that they don't print it anymore is that it's for scholars only. And here you can see the 14 books of the Apocrypha that are now left out of most printings of the Bible, that are accepted as canonical by the Roman Catholics and by the Anglican Church. And the Book of Enoch was number 15. It was the 15th book of the Apocrypha. And what actually happened is the original fathers of the church, like Irenaeus, even Jerome, the original fathers of the church were really into the Book of Enoch. The apostles definitely were familiar with it, definitely used it, especially in the book of Jude when it talks about Enoch prophesied. Terms that are in the Book of Enoch, the Son of Man, for example, the elect, are lifted directly from the Book of Enoch. So the apostles and Christ himself would have been very familiar with it, because the Book of Enoch does prophesy about God's elect, the elect. And they always refer to God in the Book of Enoch as the Lord of Spirits and the Most High and things like that. They never use other terms that are in the Old Testament for him. So it was definitely part of that. Then in the 4th century, after the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, it started becoming unpopular and was considered to start becoming heretical. And I think I understand why that is. In the later parts of the Book of Enoch, he prophesies about what's going to happen in the coming world, the world to come, because he prophesies not about now, but in a future generation. And one of the things is the chastisement of the unrighteous is, and he goes into detail about defining the unrighteousness, and a lot of that has to do with those that own the earth and accumulate wealth. And in one place he actually says, those who use other people to build their houses. In other words, slavery. Now, of course, that wouldn't have gone down very well with the Byzantine emperors, the emperors of the Eastern Roman Empire in Constantinople, because they were exactly that. They were lords of the earth, they owned the earth, and they were very fabulously wealthy, and they got rich off slave trades and other things like that. I suspect that that's one of the reasons why. Remember what we've discussed before, Constantine adopted Christianity. It was very much, there was a lot of a political aspect to it, about him adopting Christianity, and basically the Council of Nicaea reinventing it, reshaping it to become something that could have been part of an imperial agenda. And I think that the Book of Enoch was going into too much definition of unrighteousness, which was things that they were doing, was regarded as unrighteous and going to be chastised for having done so on the return of the elect, when the elect will sit on the throne. So it's also prophesying, of course, about Jesus Christ, the coming Messiah. And so what happened was, slowly but surely, from during the 4th century and by the 5th century, the Book of Enoch was anathema. It was out of the church's Bibles. It was no longer canonical. Remember, at that time, there was still only one church. There wasn't yet a schism between East and West. And of course, not for another 1,000 years, the break with Protestantism. So it was anathema. But it wasn't only anathema in the Christian Bible. Although originally it was extremely valuable and prized by the Jews, by the 2nd century AD, it was also considered heretical. And there was even a Rabbi, Simeon ben Yacher, who cursed anyone that read the Book of Enoch and who believed it. So it seemed to be a little bit difficult for people to deal with the contents of the Book of Enoch. It raised a lot of questions about spirituality. It raised a lot of questions about the rulers of the earth. There was an aspect of Gnosticism to it, not very deep though, merely that. And that is why it actually was removed. Slowly but surely it was removed. And the only reason why we have it today, there were a few incomplete copies in Greek circulating, small bits and pieces that were incomplete. But in 1773, it was rumored that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church had never gotten the message to remove it from its canons. And a certain James Bruce went all the way from Scotland to Ethiopia and brought back 3 complete copies of the Book of Enoch, which was still part of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church's canons. along with a number of other books that were not in the Bible either, the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Clement. So the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, apart from having all the apocryphal books, also had these. And that was actually translated in 1821, I think it was, by a doctor who translated it. It was in Hebrew, even though it was in the Ethiopian Bible. Remember, the Ethiopian sacred language was called Ge'ez, and Ge'ez was the ancestor of the modern Amharic that is used in Ethiopia. But it was a Semitic language very closely related to Arabic and to Hebrew. And it was translated out of that. And since then, we had a complete copy of the Book of Enoch, which has been updated a number of times thereafter. But yes, it was not part of that, just like the other books of the Apocrypha, just stopped about 150 years ago, just stopped being printed. The original King James Version had all the 14 books of the Apocrypha, except not the Book of Enoch, but had all of those. The Roman Catholic Church's Bibles still print all the books of the Apocrypha, except one, the second book, first and second book of Esdras, I think they don't recognize. So, depending on what church you belong to, they are either canonical. Many of the Protestant churches, apart from Anglican Church, many of the Protestant churches don't regard them as canonical at all. Maybe aren't even aware of them, to be honest with you. But I found that they are at least two of the books in the Apocrypha, the second book of Esdras and the book of Ecclesiasticus, not Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiasticus, also known as the Book of the Wisdom of Jesus, the son of Sirach, another Jesus, obviously, are very important. They talk about very important things. The second book of Esdras prophesies about these times today. And the book of the Wisdom of Ecclesiasticus talks about going and searching for the knowledge of the ancients. And so this is a very interesting book that we have, the Book of Enoch. And it talks about, of course, it's written by, or supposedly written by, Enoch, or in the Arabic, Idris. Now, Enoch was the seventh patriarch from Adam. Okay? So there was Adam and all of his sons, and then there was Enoch. And Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah. And Enoch had said that when he was in his 300-odd year, was taken up by the Lord, and he was translated into heaven. So this is a man that never experienced death. And according to the Kabbalah and other things, Enoch is now the great angel Metatron.
Metatron, yeah.
Yeah.
So now,
that is what people...
Sorry, I want to ask you something there, Father. Now, so Enoch is quite heavily involved with the Nephilim. He mentions that extensively in his texts. As does he talk about these hybrid beings, like the mix of human and animal?
Oh, yes.
And it's like
and
really,
of course that takes place in the Book of Enoch. Consists of 5 books. Is it 5 or 6 books? And in the first book, chapter 3, each book has got a number of chapters. It's very long, and most of it is not a page turner. I can just assure you of that. But the very interesting part, the part that's the juicy part for us, especially, is the chapter 3. In chapter 3, it talks about the fallen angels, or the angels, the watchers, who decide to rebel. And there are 200 of them, and it actually gives you their names. And they were led by an angel called Semjaza. But all the other famous ones like Azazel and that are also there. And they decide, no, we're very bored with our existence now. And what happens is they see that the daughters of men that are being born on the earth are very comely and, in fact, compatible. So they decide and they take an oath together and they say, let us go down and take wives for ourselves. But then Semjaza says, yes, I'm pretty sure that you'll want to do that, but you won't actually do it, and I'll end up taking the blame and getting blamed for it myself. So they say, okay, let's take an oath. And they take an oath that they will complete this, go down, take wives, and reproduce, which is what they do. They go down, and according to the book, they land on Mount Hermon. Now, Mount Hermon is a very high mountain on the borders of Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. And it is there, of course, still to this day. And in fact, they found ruins on the top of Mount Hermon, which no one is allowed to go and see. So they land on Mount Hermon, and they take from the daughters of men brides, and they reproduce with them. But something is not right, of course, because they're not particularly compatible. So the sons that are born to them are called giants. And there is what we call probably a scribe error, because the scribe says that some of the giants were 3,000 ells. And we believe that that was an error, because 3,000 ells is 2,250 meters tall. I mean, that's impossible. So we think that what it meant rather was that there were different kinds of entities, one of which was a giant. And the giants themselves had children that were called the Nephilim. Now, Nephilim comes from the Hebrew to fall or fallen. Nephilim, fallen. And these creatures were not particularly pleasant. They were the XYY chromosome types that were very violent, and that they actually had become cannibals because they ate everything that humans produced. When there was nothing left, they started producing humans, and they were extremely violent and perverted. They were sexually perverted, and they were extremely violent. And this is the reason why God decides to actually have the flood according to the biblical texts. And the archangels, Uriel, Michael, Gabriel, rush quickly to the Lord and say, listen, there's problems going on down there. One of the angels, Azazel, has taught men to make weapons, swords and breastplates and daggers. He's also taught women to use makeup, using antimony on the eyes to beautify the eyes. And each of these angels was teaching humanity secrets that they weren't meant to know. Kokabel, for example, was teaching them about the constellation. Semjaza himself taught women how to make medicines and things out of roots and plants and herbs that they weren't supposed to have. And then we get one clincher later on in the book of Enoch, where it names the name of an angel who taught women to smite the fetus within the womb. In other words, taught them abortion.
Sure. Oh my gosh.
And so
they taught them spells and
spells and witchcraft and sorcery. So a lot of things, bearing in mind that what they called sorcery was probably advanced science or science that they didn't have. Now, this was the world before the flood. This was Enoch's world. And in fact, they call to Enoch, these fallen. They start getting worried now because they realize they're in trouble. They can't get through to God anymore. They've lost their contact with God. And they're asking to please write for them a confession and to take it and intercede on their behalf with God, these fallen angels. And Enoch does that, and the angels come and fetch him, and he goes up. And God says it's like bizarre that you, a man, should be trying to intercede for angels when angels are meant to intercede for you. Now, the word that we're using there for angel is melachim, which just means messenger. And these guys were obviously, I don't know, you can't say that maybe they were spiritual, because spiritual beings don't actually fall. They don't have lust. So how could they? You know, it's difficult to understand how that could have been real angels as we understand angels today. And of course, this is where the whole idea of ancient astronauts and Anunnakis and things like that come in, because these guys somehow were genetically compatible with humanity and bred with them and produced giants, amongst other things, men of renown, mighty men upon the earth, who actually degenerated. And it actually mentions that they were committing all kinds of fraud. They were apparently doing genetic engineering on animals and things like that. And this is what actually caused the God to decide to do a flood. Remember, we've got a lot of things before the Younger Dryas, which is the flood, 12,500 years ago. There's evidence of advanced civilization on Earth, and in fact, maybe even a global one. We've got pyramids. We've got Pumapunku. We've got all of these ancient things like Baalbek and that existed and that appear to be antediluvian, that came from before the flood and were part of this civilization where these entities, these creatures existed. And apparently, as an advanced civilization, they were doing things that were against the laws of nature. And one of the things that the theosophists teach they were doing was creating hybrids and with animals and human beings and all that kind of dark genetic stuff, which they seem to have known. And what in the Book of Enoch is called secrets of heaven that humanity was not meant to have. And God says, Enoch, go down to your great-grandson and warn him that there's going to be a flood. So Enoch goes down to his great-grandson. Enoch's son is Methuselah, of renowned long life, remember, 900 and something years. Methuselah's son was Lamech, and Lamech's son was Noah. And he goes down and he warns Noah to hide himself. Later on in the book of Noah, it says that Noah's birth was a very strange affair. Noah didn't look like the people around him. He had golden hair and blue eyes, and he was white. And Lamech actually asks his wife, have you gone in and had sex with the sons of heaven? Because our son looks like one of them. And she says, no, I haven't. So Noah, and that's when Noah comes in, and Noah is then prepared.
But Father, you said the book of Noah. You meant the book of Enoch.
That's in the book of Noah. The copy that I used to study with has actually got a number of books at the bottom that are not part of the book of Enoch, but which links into it, like the book of Giants that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that. And you can go and look at that, and they actually link in. So there is a great flood upon the earth. This flood was meant to destroy these very violent, perverted cannibals who were preying on humanity and who had caused a bloody excess on the earth. And most of them were wiped out, but not all of them. And we know that not all of them were wiped out because later on, at the time of David, there's still giants upon the earth. And that is seen when the Israelites go into the land of Canaan to scout around, and they see these giant men walking around, and also, of course, Goliath with David. Goliath is 9 foot tall. And we've actually found these skeletons, but it's being suppressed. We found, especially in the Americas, enormous 14-foot tall skeletons. So these things were true, but it's the whole knowledge of them and their idea is being suppressed. There's people that talk about a conspiracy to preserve the various museum
the Smithsonian Museum. But when I was in India, filming. I was trying to find Jesus. The whole thing about Jesus was a Buddhist. He was in one of those Buddhist temples studying, and there was a book. It was that Russian guy that fell off his horse, and he was helped by that one Buddhist lama, and then he started telling him the story about Jesus, and he's like, "Why the hell do you know the story?" And he's like, "No, because he was here learning." So I went to go try find that monastery and find those things, and also film Bibu about the Yuga cycles. But we were at this one place where they said that Jesus helped build this temple. So I was there at that temple, and we were looking for Jesus' name because apparently there's a name inscribed in the rock or whatever. And the caretaker came up to us, and he was like, and I don't know what he was talking in Hindi or whatever to Bibu, and he said, and Bibu was telling me, he's like, no, he's telling me that last year they dug up a whole lot of giant skeletons here, and they took them away. And is that why we're here to come film? Because he said that the guy said he saw it with his own eyes, the skeletons that they dug up, and they took them, and he doesn't know where they went, but he saw it with his own eyes, the caretaker there, that they dug those skeletons up. It was quite amazing.
A quick question there, Father. A quick question before you carry on. I would sort of go back a little bit. So with regards to the hybridization of human and animal, I think this is also where you get the mermaids that have come from. You get these half man, half horse centaurs. You get all these weird and wonderful creatures that kind of started existing from those times.
Yes.
But also
chimeras.
And also what I've figured out is that prior to this, there were no demons around. Yes. When the Nephilim apparently passed on, because they had nowhere, there was nowhere for them. They couldn't go to heaven. They were then the demons. So the Nephilim are actually the demonic.
Yeah, because I just read it freshly, like over the last 2 days, and it said that they were banished to the earth, the souls of the giants forever. And then it said the woman that they slept with, the angels or whatever came down and slept in. Those women got banished to the waters, and I was like, oh, that must be the mermaids, because they got banished to the waters.
So that is the origin. This is the origin story of where demons come from. Fallen angels and their progeny, that when they died, they were not allowed to leave the earth. And of course, because they were told right from the start that there could never be any forgiveness for them, and that at the time of judgment, they would be thrown into the great pit of fire, and that they couldn't reincarnate, they started becoming evil, because they said, then why should we comply with anything? And we might as well attack this creation, because we can't be part of it. There's no way that we can be redeemed, that we can't be forgiven, especially the Nephilim. It's not our fault that we were born. It was our fathers that produced us. So this is really unfair. And so we believe, and you will see that in exorcism and that they use the names of these fallen angels. There were apparently originally 200 of them. The names are given in the Book of Enoch for all of their leaders, and that these names are still used. Azazel being probably the most famous one, as Asmodeus. You know, all of these, the names of the princes of hell, these great demons, actually have come from them. And they're constantly trying to, because of their appetites and because they can't naturally reincarnate, they're always trying to possess people, to take them over in order to live through their bodies. And this is where the whole idea of demonology came from, that it was these original 200 fallen angels and their progeny who actually came upon the earth and are demons and demoniacs. They were all the stories, not only in the Book of Enoch, but Native American legends and that all they speak about is how bloodthirsty these creatures were, that they were cannibals and that they were perverse, sexually perverse, and that they were dreadful. All these cultures speak about the same thing, that they were cannibals, all the traditions of the giants, because there was nothing else for them to eat. They wiped things out. So what could they? So they actually turned on humanity and started eating humanity. So not very nice guys, very bloodthirsty, very warlike, and very perverse. And it is now believed, or the Book of Enoch maintained, that they were the source of demons. Maybe that was also one of the reasons why the church and the rabbis didn't want this book anymore. It's very controversial stuff. And that's just the one chapter that talks about that, but obviously the most significant. They also then take Enoch up, and later on in the book, they show him all the different heavens. And it's very difficult to understand what they're talking about from our understanding of the solar system and that heavens. Whether it was different planets, or whether it was different dimensions, inner dimensions, is very difficult to say for sure. And he saw angels measuring the earth and measuring things, and he talks about the different winds and all that kind of thing. And it's very difficult for us to fully understand it. The one thing that does make sense is he talks about the sun rising in 6 different houses. And of course, that's true. Depending on the season, the sun rises in different places from the south to the north and back again. During the solstices and the equinoxes, of course, it rises directly east. So that is true. That is correct. A lot of the other stuff is very difficult to understand, though, because it's from a perspective of a human being taken up and shown things that he clearly doesn't fully understand. But anyway, he understands it later on. And he also writes a number of books before he's finally taken away. And he's told to give these books to his children, to Methuselah and his descendants, some books to be made public for common consumption, and many books to be hidden, not to be made public to everyone, but only to be given to initiates. And then, of course, he goes. He disappears and he doesn't return again. And he actually becomes, apparently, that great angel. But then comes the whole idea of Noah. Noah was prepared. Noah was given information in order to build the the ark and to save and all that kind of thing. And the story then runs from there. But it wasn't completely successful. Many of the giants survived. They would have been highly intelligent. They survived, and even down to up to a little while ago, there were still giants on the earth. And especially 3,000 years ago, clearly in the Levant, there were still many giants that were there, including one who had a huge bed. Apparently, I forget his name now. He was a king. And Jericho, for example, Jericho, one of the oldest cities on earth, going back more than 9,000 years and possibly pre-flood. Jericho means the city of the moon, by the way. And when they went, they sent spies into Jericho. They saw these huge men walking around, and yet were able to conquer them. So it doesn't mean that they were infallible or that they were impossible to overcome. They did overcome them. And in fact, if we go according to stories from the United States, from Native Americans and that, humanity actually hunted them down to the last one and killed them because they were evil or believed to be evil. They were a threat to humanity.
Well,
so,
apparently, sorry, just a quick one there, Father. I think it was in the Iraq War, the first, when they were first in Iraq, there was a battalion of soldiers that had gone in. I don't know where they were scouting, but they came across giants. Apparently, this giant
that was in Afghanistan.
Came out of the caves. Yeah, Afghanistan. That's it. They killed these guys.
What?
And they moved. They were huge, but they moved very quickly. And he killed quite a number of them. Apparently,
yes.
A big red-headed giant.
Yeah.
Polydactyla.
What was this like recently?
Yeah.
Which was very common. And
No
apparently
way.
they took the corpse, and the Americans have got the corpse that they took with them of one of these surviving giants in the mountains of Afghanistan, which is very remote. You would expect to find people like that there.
Yeah.
Apparently
he came out and he had the spear, and he like speared two of them together. It was like, apparently this oak was like massive, dude.
No, but is this like, are you guys looking at a David Wilcock YouTube channel? Or is this like
the late
is this
David
on CNN?
Yeah.
How late did he go?
Yeah, he's dead. He died apparently of suicide. Apparently,
I wonder if that's true, though. May his dear soul rest in peace. May light perpetual shine upon him, because he was one of the, he was one of these people that was very often seen on Ancient Aliens, and he wrote a number of books. And apparently, he lost his marbles and committed suicide. But I mean, your guess is as good as mine. We've just seen a large number of American scientists related to nuclear and physics research and that all being killed. So something funny is going on. Something very odd. There were 11 of them that over the past 10 years have been wiped out, have been killed. So there's something very strange going on. But it's not only him, though. I mean, it comes up in all of this investigations in the Ancient Alien thing, and that's the link. That's the link that we're looking at now. Because remember, Zechariah Sitchin, who spoke Hebrew and was able to translate the Hebrew, etc., believed that these weren't angels in the sense that we believe in angels today, in spiritual entities. Now, let me explain to you what we consider angels to be. Angels are spiritual entities who have a different configuration of soul to what we have, and the lowest that they ever step down is the higher mental. In other words, the abstract level. They never come lower than that. They don't incarnate into the flesh. They don't incarnate into personality. They have individuality, but that is individuality in the soul, not in the personality. And so it's very difficult for us who work with and who understand and represent angels and work with angels in our sacraments to think of them as ever being able to fall. It's not possible. So whoever these watchers were, and remember the Sumerians called them Igigi, the watchers. Remember, this story, like all the other stories of Genesis, seems to be a redaction of the ancient Sumerian, Akkadian stories of those that from the heavens came and who were very advanced beings and did actually interbreed with humanity and actually genetically engineered modern humans. And so there is some kind of a relation here. Were these spiritual entities, or were these just an exalted species like the Anunnaki, here's where the question arises. And this is what, a lot of these researchers go back to, and they're always quoting the Book of Enoch because of this exact thing. These 200 that landed on Mount Hermon were physical. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to seduce women. You know what I mean? So it raises a lot of questions. That's also possibly another reason why the Book of Enoch was taken out, destroyed, thrown away, only circulated in certain incomplete form in certain circles until we actually came to Ethiopia. The Ethiopians never got the message because they were very remote. And so they kept all of these non-canonical books in their Bible and are still there today. In their Bible today. The Ethiopian Bible is the largest Bible, containing 82 or 83 books, if I'm not mistaken, a lot more. All the Apocrypha, including the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Clement. So here is where these questions arise. What actually was this? And maybe it was those questions that, come up. It comes back to Genesis 6. And it seems to elaborate on Genesis 6. And although Enoch is always considered a mighty prophet, he's only mentioned very little outside of the Book of Enoch in the Old Testament, even though he was one that went directly and walked with God and was not on the earth anymore and was translated into the higher dimensions directly. So, that's very, very interesting and raises a lot of questions. That's the juicy part. Then for people like me, there are other parts in the Book of Enoch, and that seem to be predicting Christ and predicting his return. They call him the elect. And many of God's people in the later ages called the elect as well. But Christ himself, it seems to speak about him putting his elect, his chosen one, on the throne, and he being the Lord of Judgment Day. It talks a lot about Judgment Day, when all of these things will be resolved. And so you have this prophecy that comes out in the Book of Enoch as well. And then you got groups of people that practice Enochian magic and use the Book of Enoch for their rituals and things. So there's a lot of people that use it that way. And I think the foreword in my copy of the Book of Enoch was written by a man that uses Enochian magic. So the Book of Enoch means a lot of things to different people. And luckily, we've now got complete copies of it and can study it. And it raises a lot of questions,
Well, a question from my side, Father, is if you go back in time, especially maybe perhaps to the Younger Dryas, slightly before that, when the civilizations were still operational, there's a lot of mentions of portals to other realms, to other worlds, wherever it may be. There's apparently a lot of them have been found, non-working, but they've said, these are portals in America. There's stuff in India. There's stuff in China. There's stuff in Russia. I'm wondering if it's not possible that these entities are interdimensional and were able to come through to Earth at that time through these portals. And
it's
these
distinctly
guys were
possible.
They were seen as angels, or they're seen as messengers of a higher.
Look, they were obviously very powerful, very advanced, and immortal. Which doesn't mean that they were spiritual. It merely means that they had a perfect genome. Because aging and death and decrepitude are the signs of a very weak genome. We know that aging is programmed into the cell through telomeres, little strands on the ends of the cells, without which that cell would be immortal. We know, for example, that cancer cells that lose those telomeres are immortal. So immortality in the flesh apparently is not as difficult as what we consider it to be. We are born, we live, we get old, we go into decrepitude, and we die. That might not necessarily be the rule for very advanced beings and entities. The fact that they were still compatible with humanity and were able to breed with them shows that there was some kind of similarity. And that probably came from the fact that they were the model upon which we were formed, possibly, but that it was not the intention that these entities should breed with us at all. Maybe the Anunnaki, the Sumerian texts are correct. We were created as workers upon the earth, as a slave race upon the earth, and we weren't meant to interbreed with them at all. Wisdom we were given, intelligence we were given, immortality we were not given. And that's actually what was told to Gilgamesh when he went on his search for immortality, him being 2 parts God and 1 part human, apparently, according to the story. And he started getting old. He was rambunctious. He was lustful. He caused trouble in the taverns every single night in the city of Uruk, where he was king. And when he started feeling time catching up on him, he went to find out about this. And he was told, you have not been given immortality. We've given you a lovely life. We've given you a long life. Apparently, he was more than 300 years old when he passed. But you have not been given immortality. So, it raises a lot of questions. I like Zechariah Sitchin's books. I believe that he was onto something, maybe not 100%. But I suspect that these 7 heavens that they keep going to and they took Enoch to might very well be interdimensional. So, yes, you make a very good point. It doesn't mean that they come from other planets. Even the ETs and UFOs that we are having reports about these days might not be extraterrestrial at all. They might very well have been here before us. The Anunnaki were here before us, before modern human beings. And it could very well be that those 7 heavens are just higher dimensions with probably better vibration, higher vibration, where there's perfect genomes and things. That's a distinct possibility. Christ himself says, in my Father's house there are many mansions. And I wouldn't tell you that if it wasn't so. This is just the earth, This is just one planet stuck in nowhere within one dimension. There's eternal, these things. So these things need to be considered. Maybe God isn't the God of this, certainly the God of the Old Testament to me is not the eternal source of all existence, spiritual source of all existence. It's something else. I don't know about the Book of Enoch seems to be better. But I mean, you have to be honest about something. When you look back at the God of the Old Testament, and I know I might upset people here, but I'm not worried about that. The God of the Old Testament is immoral and unethical, and to a large degree psychopathic, and without doubt genocidal, with absolute contempt for human life.
That's what I keep telling people.
I can't consider that to be God. That's really more what Christ taught as his Father in heaven seems to me, the compassion in that. But I mean, we've discussed this before.
Yes,
that of the Old Testament could very well have been one of these entities vying against each other. Small letter gods. They would have seemed to be gods. Remember what Arthur C. Clarke wrote? Technology advance could be seen by lesser civilizations as magic. Obviously. And we know that now, having a taste of advanced technology, how easy that would actually be, for us. Look what happened in the Solomon Islands during the Second World War. They quickly built runways there and planes were coming in. The local people didn't know what was going on. They just knew that these creatures came from the sky in flying machines and brought them spam and canned food and bully beef, and they liked that. And when they left, they produced the cargo cults. When they still to this day go and build airplanes, hoping that its gods are going to return and bring them nice things to eat. So it's been demonstrated that this happens.
Yeah. So now a quick one as well. We've got, we were chatting a little bit earlier about the hybridization of animal and human, and it seems to be spread across the globe. It's not just like in one little section. I mean, if you look back, you got the werewolf, you got the Wendigo in America, you've got, there's the half man, half bear. Then you've got traditions like, obviously for
Bigfoot.
Whether they copy from Enoch or not, I'm not sure. But then the whole Greek mythology, you've got all these half man,
the chimera.
Things. Yeah, then you've got the Egyptian mythology where you've got like Thoth and the half ibis, then you've got them half
the
monkey,
Sphinx.
half man. So there's always it seems to be it's been with us from the beginning that there's been some sort of hybridization with human and animal.
Yeah.
So, and it's all across the globe.
These entities would certainly have had that scientific knowledge. They would have had all those secrets, the secrets of heaven, as I was saying. So they would actually have been able to do that kind of thing, because it is possible to create chimeras. It can be done. This is advanced science, but obviously not part of a plan. I know that the theosophist Madame Blavatsky claimed that wasps were created trying to create a better bee. And instead they created wasps. And there are a few stories like that where, because, wasps and bees are basically the same thing, just one is a lot more deadly and doesn't produce honey, etc. So they believe that this was actually the case. There's also stories of massive trees that existed in antiquity that were chopped down because there was a lot of oxygen in those days, the world being very different to what the world is now.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is what we look at. This is what mystics go and try and search for. We've got evidence of previous high antediluvian civilization and possibly global civilization that all of a sudden disappears, and then we crawl up again from nothing. Like we've talked about at Göbekli Tepe, how they built these temples and things, produced images of these mighty gods and things like this. And then they deliberately went and buried them. And we have no idea why this kind of thing happened. So very interesting. Definitely worth a read. Anyone that is serious about mysticism and looking deeper, and that's certainly the Gnostic texts, but also the Book of Enoch raises a lot of questions, gives some answers as well, prophesies about the coming of the elect, talks about a generation not now but in the future, which probably could allude to us when we would be able to understand these things better because of science.
But when I was reading it, I kept on thinking, geez, they're talking about today. Like, I mean, the Roman Empire thought they were talking about themselves those days, but like I'm reading and thinking, like, no, this is us today. Like that, this whatever they're talking about that's going to come, the fire and that's even more fiery than the fire is going to. It sounds like it's going to happen now, because that's everything they're saying.
Well, the Book of Enoch, right, because of its time span, prophesies two calamities. Remember, Enoch was before the flood, so he prophesied that calamity, and then he prophesied the calamity to come. So this is a book in which two great calamities spanning more than 12,500 years are predicted.
So that's the Yuga cycles. He's like predicting the Yuga cycles.
Yeah, the Yuga cycles. But of course, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Yuga cycles have got huge, enormous timelines, which I also think are not genuine. You know what I mean? I think that they were also probably errors.
Yeah, but I think what's so impressive was how Enoch prophesied Moses. But in his dream, he talked to like Moses' people as sheep, and like the Egyptians as wolves. I mean, it's so irritating how a dream always has to be so like abstract. But then he tells the whole story, and it's like, no, that is exactly the Moses story. The sheep that has to hide, and the thing, and the wolves after, and blah blah blah. So I thought that was pretty impressive.
Remember, other things are ascribed to Enoch. In fact, one of the things ascribed to Enoch was the building of the pyramids. The building of the pyramids is ascribed to Idris, who is the prophet Enoch. He could very well have been Thoth, the god of wisdom. So the timelines connect. It's a possibility. This was antediluvian, and we believe that the pyramids, especially the pyramids of Giza, are certainly antediluvian. The pyramids that were built after that seem to have not been on the standard, and many of them have collapsed and fallen down. So, I mean, that is my personal belief, which is very interesting. There's another thing that comes up, and I'm just going to mention it because it's just out there, and you can take it for what it is. 2 Sundays ago, I did a lecture at church on the Shroud of Turin and all the evidence that's come up on the Shroud of Turin. And it seems to be now to be much more authentic. The original carbon-14 dating that was done in the 1970s has been proven to have been done on a piece of the cloth that was repaired by nuns with cotton from the Middle Ages. But when they compared the flax to flax that they found at Masada, they are compatible. And one of the things that came up about the image of the man on the shroud was that he was very tall and muscular. He was, in fact, 5'11", just under 6 foot tall. And that was very unusual for the time. At the time, the average was 5'5", 5'6". And one of the things in the Book of Enoch, it mentions that his elect would stand head and shoulder above the others, just as a matter of interest.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I mean, apart from all the other evidence that's come in from the Shroud of Turin, which is massive and unbelievable, you have that one thing coming out as well. And then, of course, the genetic testing that they did on the blood of the Shroud, which remained intact, was that he was definitely AB. We're not sure whether it was AB positive or AB negative. The blood type is AB, but the Y chromosome, this is very interesting to me. What they actually found was genetic parcels and particles that were already extinct 2,000 years ago in that area. So whoever this was had an archaic genome that had already become extinct and was returned. And the geneticists don't know how to explain it. Wow. So obviously the man in the Shroud is Semitic. He's a Judean. He was definitely a Nazarene. But there was something about the haploid groups and the particles in his genome that were archaic for some reason, and we can't explain it. But it just happens to mention in the Book of Enoch that he would stand head and shoulders above those around him. So this just popped into my mind when I was doing the research for that, in the Book of Enoch, it actually says that. So another very interesting thing.
Now the giants, when the world was kind of full, and I'm not talking about the 10-foot, 11-foot giants. I'm wondering now because I think in America you got that Devil's Mountain, or what's it, Devil's?
Yes, which is believed to be the stump of
tree trunk.
Yeah, a tree trunk.
Yeah,
and they've got other things.
If that thing
like a fossilized tree trunk,
if that thing is true, that means that tree was kilometers high, which means, I mean, how tall then would be the human beings? I mean, if you compare our heights to an average tree, I mean, we probably maybe about a tenth of the height. So if that thing was about 10 kilometers, can you imagine how big these guys must have been?
Precisely, but can you also imagine what the oxygen levels in the atmosphere would have been with those trees? The oxygen levels would have been much higher, promoting growth, which means that giants would have been absolutely possible, not only in humanity, but in other creatures as well. Insects, for example, whose size is limited by the oxygen level in the atmosphere because they have spiracles that they breathe through, could have become huge. You know, a very different world.
Have you heard that theory on the dinosaurs? Because like the dinosaurs' weight, the size of a dinosaur, like they couldn't actually hold themselves up because of their weight and that, and what their bones and everything are made out of. That they actually there's a hypothesis now that the gravity level was not so intense back then because the atmosphere was a lot different and whatever. Even the pterodactyls, like a pterodactyl, they said would not be able to fly actually unless there was less gravity and there was more atmosphere. And there's that. Have you guys heard of that theory?
Yeah, but it makes sense.
I've heard of a number of theories about the dinosaurs. We found carvings of dinosaurs that were much more recent. And there's things that are saying that maybe dinosaurs were not extinct millions of years ago, but were actually only went extinct because of the flood. I don't know. I mean, there's evidence in carvings and graphics. Possible. We don't know. A lot of things are being questioned now because we now know what it is to be lied to by governments and control and by the narrative to be controlled. That has been exposed. We know that it's possible. What else are we being lied to about? What else doesn't make sense? What else is not right? If you consider those fossilized tree stumps, you consider that the world could have been a very, very different place, a completely different place. We're talking now about giants and beings, interdimensional beings, possibly alien beings, all that kind of thing, compared to the world that we have now. It's completely different, a very different thing. And our purpose is to ask questions. That's why we do this. We understand that something is wrong with the world, that there's something wrong with the narrative, and we search. We're doing what Christ taught us to do: knock and the door will be open. Seek and ye shall find. We know we need to look deeper, and that's why we do what we do. That's why you have your podcast where you interview all kinds of strange and bizarre people having different experiences, and it is to share those experiences and hopefully to come up with bits and pieces of the puzzle that fit in so that we get a more complete picture. That's the whole point of this whole thing. But the Book of Enoch is definitely up there, and the contents of the Book of Enoch are very important to researchers and people that are looking for answers, because the narrative seems to raise a lot of very different possibilities to what we've been indoctrinated with and what we've been taught with regards to the church and the creation of humankind, etc. This whole Genesis 6 and the whole Book of Enoch and raises a lot of questions about the sons of heaven. Who were they? What were they? What did they do here? How did they influence us? This is what we do, and our information is incomplete. What are UFOs today? Are they still here? Are they, as Lee says, interdimensional beings that are able to pop across into a different dimension, which many of the UFOs seem to be able to do? They move very quickly. That shouldn't be possible, and then they just disappear, and then they just appear again, and that kind of thing. That is what interdimensional travel would have been. What was Christ's ascension? Was that a dimensional shift? It's a distinct possibility. What are we actually dealing with now? We know that there's multiple dimensions, possibilities, and he actually even told us that in my Father's kingdom there are many mansions, many different worlds, many different dimensions, all kinds of things. So, I mean, this is fascinating that we have this now, and it's amazing that these things came out only in the last 150 years or so. Recently, the Nag Hammadi library from Egypt, all of these lost gospels, the Enoch and all the Book of Enoch coming through us from Ethiopia, where it was retained and where it was lost in the West for so long. All of a sudden, these things are appearing. It's almost as if there's a revelation. And remember, apocalypse means revelation.
So maybe
with
we're
the
not
state
going to
that the world's in now, I don't know. I mean, we've just heard stories. There's a report now, I don't know how true it is, that Trump asked for the nuclear codes, and the general refused to give it to him. Yes, and the general was fired today because he refused to give. These people are deranged, and they can do just about anything. What would happen now, because he's losing in Iran, what would happen if he now nuked Iran? Then we have all of this starting all over again. Very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. We're in very unsettled times. The collapse of empires is always traumatic and produces all kinds of effects. So we carry on seeking.
Jeez. I wonder if Noah had two T-Rexes on Noah's Ark would be like.
Well, you mentioned something about gravity earlier, and it makes sense that would be the case, because if everything was so big, gravity would be a lot less. I mean, you wouldn't have trees growing kilometers if gravity was as strong as it is now. So gravity must have been very different.
A tree could probably do it. A tree could defy gravity on that level because of it's so robust. But more than gravity wouldn't be as much of an obstacle as the oxygen content of the atmosphere. Those dinosaurs, Ultrasaurus and that, huge brachiosaurs and Titanosaurus, that were enormous, the largest animals to ever exist on the earth, were mobile. They were mobile. They ate plants. You were talking about the pterodactyls. The largest pterodactyl was a creature called Quetzalcoatlus, who was as tall as a giraffe. It was enormous.
Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, Quetzalcoatlus, named after Quetzalcoatl, obviously, which is the feathered serpent. This was the largest flying creature ever to exist, according to our science. And it was enormous. It was like 3 stories high. It was a huge thing that could fly from the Americas to Europe, and it could traverse the whole earth with an enormous wingspan. So, I mean, these are possibilities. As we are now, we believe that the largest land animal that ever existed was the Intricathea, which was 4 times the size of an African elephant. 4 times the size of an African elephant. It was related to rhino, to the rhinoceros, this Intricathea, a huge mammal. that lived a few million years ago. So, I mean, many things are possible. I like your idea, Lee, about interdimensionality. That these don't necessarily have been aliens from outer space or another planet, but could have been interdimensional. Absolutely. That seems to make a lot of sense. And that would also explain the 7 heavens that they take Enoch into, which is hard for us to understand, but it makes a lot of sense if it's dimensions and interlinked dimensions particularly. That would be very interesting. That's a very good point.
Yeah. You see it in the Quran as well, where the Prophet Muhammad goes and speaks to the jinn in their world, which I've always thought is just another dimension because they can see us, but we can't see them.
Yes.
I've always had that thought that, because people are saying, oh no, but you look into space and the Webb telescope can't see life on other planets. I said, but why are you looking at other planets? There's not other planets. It's another dimension. It's
yeah. Other dimension. Yeah, jinns are meant to be creatures made of fire, one of God's creation. And then, of course, there is what Muhammad ascended into heaven. He also had an ascension into heaven from Jerusalem on Barak, the celestial horse, that hybrid, which was a hybrid between a horse and a man, apparently. And he ascended into the 7 heavens. So that's apparently took place at Jerusalem. And that's why Jerusalem is the 3rd holiest site in Islam. So so the mysteries just continue. The mysteries just continue. And we look at them, and we look through all mythology, we look through all scripture, we look through the ancient Sumerian and Akkadian, and we see the overlapping lines. And we look now also what I'm going to be doing a talk on at Michaelmas at the Younger Dryas, the Great Flood, which is all over the world in every single culture is the Great Flood, and possibly more than one. And we know that the timeline is correct for the Younger Dryas, because when Solon, who was Herodotus's grandfather, went to Egypt, the priest, that was about 2,500 years ago, the priests told them that there was Atlantis, the story of Atlantis, and that was 9,000 years ago. So it's kind of, the timelines seem to add up, and that's another thing that's in the Bible that is proven to be true. If this is actually what it is, we know there was a massive flood, global flood that destroyed everything 12,500 years ago. And we believe that was caused by comets hitting the glaciers of North America, massive glaciers, very rapid melting. And we've still got the canyons and the flow streaks and things in America of this great flood having happened and having been recorded. And this links into the Book of Enoch, who was told to go and warn his great-grandson, Noah. So, I mean, there's a link between these things somewhere. And there's still a few pieces of the puzzle that we've got to search for. We don't quite have the complete picture yet, but we know certain things definitely for sure. Very interesting, though, I think.
Yeah. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah.
Always a very interesting thing. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Well, I'm always happy to be invited onto your podcast. It gives us an opportunity to discuss these things openly. We're not telling people this is what happened or this isn't. We're suggesting things, and I'm hoping that this talk today will inspire people and whet their appetite to go and read it. Go and read it. It's on the internet. You don't even have to go and invest in a book. It's on the internet. Go in and look for the Book of Enoch. The complete translation is there, a very good translation, several translations. Go in and read them. Go in and read the Gnostic Gospels. Go in and read the scriptures of other religions, especially the Hindu scriptures, the Puranas and the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. Go and read those things. In the Ramayana, for example, here's a little bit of a tidbit. Lord, the monkey god, Hanuman, is not actually called a monkey god in the Ramayana. He's called one of the forest people. And he was big and hairy and looked ape-like.
Bigfoot.
And that could be very out your Bigfoot. Bigfoot. Bigfoot is, if anything, if Bigfoot does exist, and there's a lot of evidence, Bigfoot is a hominid. He's one of the hominids, or the early hominids that we know walked the earth. And yeah, in the Ramayana, they're talking about one of the forest people. That's Lord Hanuman, Lord Rama's helper, who they say is a monkey, but it wasn't a monkey. He was one of the forest people and could have been one of these hominids that had survived in the Indian forests and jungle. So there's an appetizer for you. Go and read these things, find out more. I think that's what's important, is that we urge people, while the internet is still as free as what we hope it is, to go and search out this information, read it, because we don't know for how long we'll still be able to access this information, or how long we'll be able to, or the internet will be free, or as free as what it is today. And I always warn people about this. Go and find out the information before it disappears.
Well, it sounds like we're going to get nuked before that. So,
well, if that story is true, and I've seen it in a number of places today, coming up on YouTube, then we've got a lot to worry about.
Sure.
Because desperate people, desperate men do dangerous things. They're being shown that they haven't accomplished any of their objectives, etc. And for an unhinged mind, the next thing would be go and nuke. And Trump said a very strange thing. He said that I would have sorted out the Vietnam War in 45 minutes, which alludes to.
Well, he couldn't even sort out the 2 wars that he promised would be sorted in a week when he came into power, and he didn't even sort that out.
Hasn't happened. So, I mean, we're in a time now where leadership is very poor, especially in the Western world, extremely poor leadership. And that was predicted, by the way, in the Puranas. It said in that time, the Srimad Bhagavatam says at that time, the rulers of the earth will be nothing but demons in disguise. And that certainly seems to be the case.
Do you not think that the interdimensional beings won't allow it? Because it seems like they've had issues in the past where they've almost been launches. They've almost been nuclear launches, but these things have come across and kind of shut things down. So
there's evidence of nuclear blast on the Sinai Peninsula that would have wiped out Ur, Mohenjo-Daro, and Harappa. Seem to have had a nuclear incident. The skeletons that they found there are radioactive from 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah.
So it could be. The thing is, Lee, we've always understood something. The archons. Who are the archons? Who are the entities, the demiurge and that rules our world? Are they not dimensional beings that actually do that? Are we not serving the purpose of dimensional beings? I mean, the human beings that are in positions of power, are they not just puppets? And are they not just the minions of these higher entities? I mean, that is what Gnostic belief teaches. I think that is the case. And I think that they benefit in some way from retaining humanity, incarnated into personalities on this planet. They benefit somehow from that. And they need to control the narrative. So, the possibility is endless. The possibility is there. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Father.
We could probably go for another hour, but yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Once we get started, this can go.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks again, Father. Yeah, always a pleasure.
We'll speak again in a month or two. Hopefully we'll have something to Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Father. Amazing. Right. Thank you again.
Bye-bye, William.
Bye-bye, man.
Yeah, always cool to have Father on. I love how those discussions go. It's always very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I don't know. I do honestly think that the entities or whoever are around won't allow a nuclear war.
Well, absolutely.
I don't think, to be honest, I'm not really worried about that. I think it will be okay. I don't think it'll allow. All the other shit will happen. Because can you imagine if they're using us for whatever, and half of us get blasted to smithereens? I mean, they've lost half their workforce. They don't want that.
Yeah. Well, their batteries. They lost half their batteries.
You watch Matrix. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's why they keep us in a perpetual state of fear and anger.
Yeah.
To feed off that, man.
Yeah, but you got to get over that, though. You got to learn to surpass that shit.
I know. Then they're like, this useless fucking battery. Just get him out of here. and they throw you. But I don't know. Maybe you
Did you not know
get put in
David
the.
Wilcox had passed away?
No, I didn't.
Mm.
It's 'cause I don't know. I haven't been. I mean, he went a bit too far out for me. I mean, like I had to. Your woo woo limit. I mean, I'm pretty. I love the crazy stuff, but like I don't know. I
You're
think
pretty woo yourself, but you're
the
like
thing,
not that woo.
yeah, I'm a total what's calling the kettle black hypocrite. But the thing is, like, you saw it with even with what is the lady, the famous the where she does the cattle mutilations.
Linda Moulton Howe.
She won her Emmy. Yeah, Linda Marta Howe. Like she was like so legit. But then
Yeah.
the problem is that you become legit, you could become famous, and now you got to pump out this content the whole time, and then it's like now where do you go from there? You have to. It just gets crazier and crazier and crazier because you've got to like produce something all the time. I mean,
Mm.
luckily me and you just interview people, so it's like we find it interesting, so we don't have to come up with crazy like or
Ideas.
show crazy things. So like I think Wilcock like it becomes like a machine. You have to like come up
Make
with the
it better
next
than last time.
craziest thing. Like and then like I don't know. Then I think you kind of lose the plot a bit. Or maybe he was telling the truth. I don't know because of what happened. I don't know. But that's
Yeah.
why I lost interest in him.
Yeah. I stopped watching
And Linda.
when I stopped because he was running that program on Gaia TV.
Yeah.
He was running that program that's he was interviewing guys that were like traveling in the future and that kind of stuff. And I found it interesting, but then it becomes like the same thing over and over. And eventually, when I left Gaia TV, I kind of didn't hear from him again. I didn't hear about him. But yeah,
Yeah.
shame, shame.
Geez, but
But
did you watch? Did you see the Bob Lazar's latest interview on Rogan
uh,
about the new film? I'm gonna go watch that film tonight.
what's it called?
It's called S4, Bob and S4, something S4. They've done like a proper 3D render like of exactly S4 and Bob's experience like going in there. And Bob worked on it with, well, not worked on it with them, but he was obviously they had to ask him, okay, well, what did you see here? What did you see there? Like, how did the ship look? And then they'd render it. And then Bob would put the virtual reality goggles on and be like, oh, yeah, I remember now. There was a thing on the right here. There was like a door or something. And then, so it's like a real model of exactly what S4 looked like. I can't wait to see it. And then he was on Rogan like 2 weeks ago discussing the whole thing. Very interesting. And obviously went, into a lot of other cool stuff. So please, guys, go out and check that.
Yeah, 100%. I'll definitely go check it out. S4, eh? Let's see what it's
Yeah,
called.
S4. I don't know. Just if you Google the S4 movie or something.
Okay. Bob Lazar's. Bob
Yeah,
Lazar's S4 movie. Okay, I'll go and have a look. No, look a bit.
S4. Let me just check here. Oh, fuck's sakes. What it is. S4. Watch S4, the Bob Lazar story, Prime Video.
S4, the Bob Lazar story. Okay. Yeah, I've always liked him. I've always, whenever I've heard him talking, I've always believed what he said. Always, from the beginning.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's like, you must hear this one. It's so cool.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always, and he's like not into conspiracy theories or anything, He's actually like questioning him, like they can't on Rogan, they like talking about stuff, and he's like, "Oh, come on, guys, like seriously, like no, that's ridiculous." And then Rogan's like, "What are you talking about? You got the most ridiculous story on the world. Like, are you giving a shit about our story?"
Yeah, but I mean, he worked on in his story. He was actually working at the place. So, I mean, if he's telling you something that he said is actually work from, but I suppose I'd be the same. I mean, if I know something for a fact, it might sound a bit funny, but because you've been working with it and you work for so many years, it's like a normal thing to you. And then somebody tells you the story that this ET kind of morphed into his bedroom, you'd probably think, fuck, it sounds like bullshit.
Yeah. It's like I've dealt with them. I've worked with the craft. Like nothing ever materialized. There was no fucking grays. Like you guys are talking shit, man. Although there had to be small people to climb into that thing to sit there. Yeah, so it's very cool. I love Bob Lazar's story. I think he's totally legit.
Yeah, 100%. No, awesome, buddy.
Okay, sweet guys.
Cool. Yeah, thanks everybody again. As always,
Remember,
like and subscribe, and yeah, we'll chat next week. Thanks, Will.
cheers guys. Just leave.
Thanks, buddy.